Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
I do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States. There you have it. You have my proclamation, let's put it that way. Now on record, it's out there in public. And, you know, how do I do that if I have no idea in the world what's in the Constitution? We all can make this confession of our loyalty to our country and uphold the Constitution. I don't know, when the presidents, like you just heard in our intro, so are they required to study out the Constitution and know in detail the history of the Constitution, all the different ins and outs of all the statements in the Constitution? Shouldn't we put candidates for president to a test, and they have to pass a rigorous test to become president, to even run for president? I think we should put people together that are scholars, by which I am not. I'm going to confess that right now. I am not a scholar of the Constitution, but I mean, there are people out there that know it by heart, I'm sure. And shouldn't we put these people together and have them question the candidates running for president, because they are going to stand up at the beginning of their term, and like what I just played in the intro there, that I do solemnly swear. Yoo-hoo! I solemnly swear that I'm going to uphold the Constitution. I have no idea what it says in there, and I might try to reword it a little bit from time to time, but I do solemnly swear that I will uphold that their document, that thing there. I don't know if they're not going to even know what's in the Constitution. Maybe we should just take that out of what they have to say when they do solemnly swear at the beginning of their term, what they're going to do. So I don't know. Let's get Abigail's opinion on this. Abigail, oh hear ye, oh hear ye, oh hear ye. How art thou today?
I'm doing wonderful. I just came off of prayer, so
yeah, of course.
So I'm ready for it, Mark. I'm ready. I'll tell you the truth. I love that question because you would think that there would have to be some type of just a little test regarding what you know about the United States of America and the Constitution and what this is all about. But now all you have to do is be born here.
Period.
And then you have if the people, this is where the challenge is, because if the people don't know the Constitution, and then someone's running for president,
then
you're just voting for, wow, he's kind of
wide open.
Cute. Oh, I think I can relate to him. Well, what part of him do you relate to?
That's right.
And so I think that unfortunately, it's sad. It really is.
It is. We have to keep those in office accountable for what they say, and the very first thing they do when they put their hands on, oh, my Bible's clear over here, put their hands on their Bible and raise their hand, and they say, I do solemnly swear. Well, of course, you know, they probably don't even know what's in the Bible either when they have to lay their hand on the Bible there. So, you know, 6 of 1, 9/10 of 3/32. What are you gonna do with it? I do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution. I have no idea what's in the Constitution, but I'm going to uphold it. Whenever they tell me what I'm doing, you know, that I'm supposed to do, I'll do it. You know, man, you know, I just think we need to put them through a test first, even before they're allowed to run. You know, I mean, not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can just run for president. Yeah, I mean, there are qualifications for doing that. One of them, I don't know. That's sorry. I just, you know, it's just one of those thoughts that I had. And of course, we're going through this stinking election right now, and here we are in a civil war, calling out the militia. Oh, the militia. Oh, hey, calling out the militia for the, you know, to several different states I know have called out the militia, and to make sure everything goes well. But anyway, so did you pre-vote, or are you waiting for voting day, or what's the story on y'all?
Well, we didn't pre-vote. We were going to go last night, but we had so many things that happened yesterday. We got commitments. We just had a lot of commitments, so we didn't make it there. James really he likes to vote on the day.
Yeah, we do too.
He just wants to vote on the day, and I get it. I like it too. But for some reason, within me, I had this sense of urgency about voting early. For some reason, it's like I want to get that vote in, you know, and because we're always right now. I just feel like we're in a point in time where we're on the edge of our seat. And I feel like, you know, there's certain things there's a lot of gutters. Let's get this done because we just don't know what's coming next. I mean, it's like every day there is just another page that's turned, and it causes all of us to be alert.
That's right.
And I was going to get back to your question about the, the people knowing the Constitution before they run. And then they lay their hands on the Bible and swear to the Father, you know, to keep it. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I believe I have an understanding of what can happen if you swear on the Bible. You make an oath to the Father. I am going to uphold this Constitution of this land, and then you have no idea what it is to begin with, and you have no plans of doing it anyhow. You already come in with an agenda. You know, you're going to do whatever you want to do anyhow, but yet you lay your hands on the Bible. Do you believe that these people, whoever it is that is not upholding the Constitution, do you believe somewhere along the line they're going to be held accountable for their?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Though I will have to say that, you know, if you're really not upholding the Bible and what's in it in the first place, and in your mind, your your respect for the Bible and what it has to say in there is really as nonchalant as it is towards the Constitution, then really who's to say one way or the other, except for God, of course. And God, that's really where you're coming from here, is that, you know, God will hold them accountable for their words. And we already know that. It's a simple fact to me that I think they don't really have respect for the Bible in the first place. And does that make a difference to God? I mean, if you don't have respect for the Bible and you're already using it to swear upon which is just like, I'm not so sure there isn't even words in Torah that nullify that to begin with, that you swear by the Bible. I'm not so sure that that's I don't know. I see that's a whole nother subject that we may need to look into and discuss in the first place, is whether or not that's even viable according to Torah. I don't know. Hey, I don't know, but I agree. I will agree with you. I with the little knowledge that I know on this, is that I would have to say that, yeah, if you can swear by the Bible and then you don't uphold what you swore by, then eventually, yeah, the wrath of God shall come down upon thine head. Thy thunderbolt of the Lord shall, or something like that. I don't know.
Well, I think one thing that will happen, I mean, this is scriptural, the Father, you reap what you sow. Number one, he says that, you reap what you sow. And so if you're not sowing the word into your life and you're not living the word, then you're gonna reap the curses of not obeying. So, and then when it says, when a man only does what's right in his own eyes and not what's right in the eyes of the Creator, what does he do? He brings in judges. He brings in judges.
Yeah, there you
go. To, judge, to bring back justice.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of sowing and reaping taking place right now in this day in history.
Sure.
Right? There's a lot of people that are being raised up for such a time as this.
That's right.
To bring back the law and to bring back justice. So I just think that one way or another, there's a payback one way or another. There's a blessing or there's a curse.
Very good. Very well said. These are thoughts that, I'm just now kind of putting together. It's especially, I love that intro that I put together, because every time I hear it, it makes me think of something new that I hadn't thought about even when I put it together. So
that's awesome. That's can I say it's a stirring intro?
That's right.
I love stirring intros. I really do. I think that's more than half the battle as far as woohoo! Talk about a stirring intro. Look at that, stirring the pot today. I love it.
There she is.
Sherry.
Hey.
Good morning. Good morning. How art thou? We're
recovering from food poisoning. So.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
You don't eat out for 9 months, and it wasn't where we ate out. I think I got some bad chicken. I just picked some up at the store. I ain't doing that again. But
yeah.
Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Well, sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're recovering.
Just to comment on what y'all were saying, is there was a move in England to end oaths taken on the Bible. And they wouldn't do it because they were saying it strengthens the value of a witness's evidence. Yeah. And that atheists are allowed to say something like they sincerely and truly affirm.
Yeah.
Instead of saying they swear.
Yeah.
But gosh, when you're swearing on the Bible, you're asking God to witness what you're saying. So it's a big deal. And I mean, we're actually told not to swear by anything, but then when you're taking an oath,
that's right,
to tell the truth, and you're asking, when you put your hand on that Bible, you're asking God, witness what I'm saying. You're a witness that what I'm saying is the truth. And he's like, no.
In that intro that I play every time, you only hear the voices, but every one of us know, because every one of us have watched it, is that their hand is on that Bible when they're saying those words, I do solemnly swear, and we all know it. But I mean, even before we were getting into that, Sherry, we were talking about that. I'm wondering, of course, it's not going to happen, but I'm wondering, should we require anybody even wanting to run for president and that will eventually have to put their hand on the Bible? And I do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution. Should each one of those people that want to run, should they have to go through a test or a class to learn the Constitution inside and out and to know all the things in there? If they're going to say, I uphold that, shouldn't they know it? Shouldn't they be put to the test before even saying they're going to uphold it? I don't know. Yeah.
A lot of them have only know what they've been told. They've never sat and read it. A lot of things that they've been told, a lot of the young people that they've been told in the universities and colleges is a big fat lie.
Uh-huh.
What is it, this 1620 thing that they put out and all this kind of stuff? I mean, it's ridiculous. And in fact, I've actually been working on my little Thanksgiving thing, teaching on that. So it's interesting all this is coming up because our forefathers, the Pilgrims, the Puritists, and the Separatists, whatever name you want to put on them, founded this country on biblical principles.
Yeah.
And they very clearly said, I'm talking about the Mayflower Compact, they're talking about one of the things in the Mayflower Compact is that they would live by the Christian faith.
Uh-huh.
So you cannot say that this country was not founded on biblical principles. It's the only other country that's founded on biblical principles, or not biblical principles. They were founded on the Word of God, is Israel. And I think that's why Israel and America is so close. That's my personal opinion.
That's right. Well, it's said all the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the Constitution up.
But if somebody doesn't believe in God, they have no problem putting their hand on the Bible.
Yeah, I agree.
For Almighty God, they're going to tell the truth. They don't fear any repercussions.
Yeah.
Somebody, just like when we watched Amy Coney Barrett being sworn in, she took there's two different oaths that they take. They take to uphold the constitutional oath, and then the oath that they took with Roberts was what they call the judicial oath. So there's two people are saying, oh, it's just like a ceremonial oath. No, the first oath they take is to uphold the Constitution, and the second oath is the judicial oath, where they're sworn in to hold up the judicial laws of this country. But why did I go on to? Oh, when she put her hand on that Bible and when she got through, I said, she means it. She means it because she believes in God. She believes, you stand responsible for God, and she really believes the oath that she took. Whereas you get some reprobate up there who thinks that, the Constitution is a living, breathing thing, and that it changes over time when people's ideas change, or when their morals change, then they're to change the Constitution to fit the society. No, society is to follow the Constitution. And that's the big difference between what we've got going on in Washington. Is you've got those who are constitutional originalists, which Amy Coney Barrett is, and you've got other people who believe that the Constitution changes with the whims of the doctrine of the people, which is ridiculous. And that's why one thing people talk about us being a democracy, we're actually not a democracy. We are a republic. We have representatives. In a democracy, the majority rules. So if all the majority thinks that they can just, kill everybody over the age of 25, then that would be the law of the land. But because that's the majority rules. But the majority in this country does not rule. We're ruled by representatives. And we need to be more careful of the representatives. Biden, if you watch him, my personal opinion, not the opinion of Messianic Lamb Radio or anybody else, my personal opinion, I've watched him. He chooses his words carefully. I've never taken any money from a foreign government, but it's coming out that it's funneled through his son. So he is speaking the truth on the words he says, but what's coming out, it is funneled through his son.
Sure.
That's the kind of thing that you have to watch, like he did on the debate. Now, he put his hand at the debate when he said, I'm not going to eliminate fracking. I'm not going to eliminate fracking. No, he said he's going to transition out of fracking. So,
all right.
I mean,
Okay.
they're little weasels with the words.
We can go on this.
I know. I mean, I'm just saying.
4 hours.
It's you know, yeah. I wouldn't believe he took an oath before God. Yeah. You know, why you question my faith? Well, I see how you're living, you know.
Right.
And so anyway, I'm getting off topic, but
that's okay.
I don't want to get into politics, but
we just need to get started. So yeah, we're good. Thanks. What you're saying is exactly right. We need to be reminded of all of that, and that's exactly right. But we're going to get going on our clauses today, or we'll never get them done. And Sherry, it's good to have you back. We haven't had you on here for a while, and we've been missing you. So we are at Article 1, Section 8, and going through the different clauses, which there are, I think, 18. We are on Clause 16 today, and the last two before this have been, as you go through Article 1, Section 8, you'll find that there are 2 or 3 clauses, maybe 4 or 5, that all have to do with the same subject, and then it'll jump to a different subject. And we're on 16, which is kind of the end of a subject with Clause 14, 15, and 16, having to do with Congress having the power to make rules for our forces, our different military forces, that type of thing. And Clause 14 says the Congress shall have the power to make rules for the government and make rules for regulation of the land and make rules for naval forces. Clause 15, which we did last week, and I think Abigail will agree, was one of the most interesting subjects that we've covered, which is the militia. Clause 15 says the Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. And so Clause 16 this week reads, the Congress shall have the power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Last week, once again, we went into a lot of detail about the militia, and one of the things that Abigail and I discussed, which I thought was real interesting, I didn't know before doing the research on there, that any part of the military that is not active military in the United States is considered militia. So you have basically two different respects as far as the United States government is concerned. You have the organized militia and the unorganized militia. Any of our troops that are on reserve, and for instance, the National Guard, and the National Defense Force, the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard. All of those are considered and under the heading of militia. And we talked last week about the history of when our country was first formed and how they needed to not only have an active military force to defend our country, but also have people outside of that active force, that active armed military force, to be ready no matter what. And those could be those people armed by the government themselves, or they could actually be civilians that were not even paid by the government or were paid by the government. There's a lot of different ways to list that off. If you missed last week, you should go to the MessianicLambRadio.com and find, you can find several different links to this show, Contemplating the Constitution, and it is listed in there where you can go and watch that. But your organized militia is the National Guard. The unorganized militia would be those all able-bodied men 17 to 45 years of age who are ultimately eligible to be called up to military service, but not to be put on active military service. And it's very interesting because even what the word we know and we understand is people that are called guerrillas or freedom fighters, paramilitary, mercenaries, those type of people, I think we already understand and do even call them a militia. Though what I didn't understand before, though I think most people don't understand, is that even as long as you come within a certain criteria, you don't have to be employed by the government. You don't have to be active or inactive duty on reserve or anything. You are considered by the United States of America to be militia. And if they want to call you at any given moment, all they have to do is knock on your door and say, you, sir, are now a part of the United States militia. Gather your things. Let's go. And I mean, it is in the Constitution. It is part of what the United States recognizes as far as the militia is concerned. So in my mind, up until I did this research, in my mind, I always thought that a militia would be a group of men and or women in a certain area that were armed. They organized themselves and stood up for a cause and would fight for the country or whatever needed to be done, especially in specific times. But that's not true. That is true to a certain extent, but not according to the Constitution and what's understood by our government. And so a militia can literally be even one person, does not have to be organized, or it can be an organized group of people. So with that understanding, which is what I want to portray on this broadcast, on this show, is to let you know that this is the way our government looks at these things. So if this is how it's documented, then that's what we're going to portray on this show. to make sure that you understand that also. We don't want you to be misinformed or to have, like I did. I had a wrong opinion or a wrong understanding of what that word meant. We want you to understand what the actual meaning of all of these things are. That's why we're doing the show. That's why we are portraying all the things that we're portraying. So there's a kind of an intro to that. So anything from last week, Abigail, you want to bring up that I didn't bring up that you got out of what we talked about?
Well, I think it's interesting because we have, as I was expressing last week, in Lexington, Massachusetts, the Minutemen. And that is the militia you're talking about. And so, I mean, that's one of the historical places that people go to see where that war took place. And what, to me, I read it just now again, typically 25 years old or younger. I mean, those were the ones that were going to be doing fighting the battles, And when I think about that, I'm like, they were babies. I mean, 25 to me is a baby anyhow, but I mean, but to me, I just think but I know there's strength in a 25-year-old young man.
Yeah.
But younger. And when you do any research on that whole battle, it's like, it's really, it carries a lot of challenging outcomes. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But one thing that we talked about, Mark, is, and I thought again, how timely is this message with everything that's going on?
Very true.
Just saw something just now in Philadelphia on the news where they should have called the militia in. I mean, Philadelphia was ransacked by, it was not a peaceful protest. They were crashing windows.
Right.
They were looting. And they were harassing people, and it happened in New York City too. It happened in New York City when there was Jewish people for Trump, and they attacked these people with all kinds of instruments that were very deadly and whatnot. So this is my concern with the militia. And James and I have had talks about this, and Brian, and we've just had these kind of like, why is it not allowed? Why do we have to wait for a governor to say, yes, bring it in, when we can see it with our own eyes? This is destroying lives.
Yeah.
To me, there should be a clause that says, we need to I don't care if the governor is, brain dead. We want to preserve life in these places. So, that was my main stirring. When you brought this up, I'm telling you, it has been a hot button with me anyhow. But I'm thankful in a way. I'm thankful in a way that they do have that kind of first, let's go to the governor. What do you say, Governor? We are here if you need us. No, this is a love fest. Governor, as you're talking right now, I'm watching the television. And I'm seeing that businesses are being burnt down. I'm seeing that people are being hit over the head with guns and bats and shot at, and people being run over. A policeman was run over, and right now in the hospital, a female policeman, and a broken leg. Governor, realize that we will come there with the militia.
Let's get some people in there, right? Let's get some people in there.
That to me is like insanity, and it's also totally contrary to the Constitution because of preserving life and that whole thing. So, this is a hot button. Every time we talk about this, I get scared, and I'm ready to go there and fight in these places. But they don't say females.
Well, there's you got to go back and look at it.
I meet the 25 one.
Go back and look at it.
25 times.
let me give a little bit of history on Clause 16, and then we'll get into the details of it, and then we'll discuss everything what we have to offer here. When discussing the constitutional interaction between federal government and military, much of the conversation centers on the office of the president. Abigail has mentioned the governor several times, which we understand for each state, and we'll see this, but each state is in control, but also Congress and the president. But as far as history is concerned, it used to just be the president. As the president is declared the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States in Article 2 of the Constitution. What should not be overlooked, however, is the important role of the legislator plays in how America armed forces operate. While the president may have greater direct control over the military, especially in times of war, Congress's power under Article 1, Section 8, which is what we're looking at right now, 14, 15, and 16, Clause 14, 15, 16, provide both an important check on presidential power. That's what this is about, is that Congress having the power, the president having the power, and the governor having the power in each different state. Congress needs to put a check on all of that, and that's what the clauses are about. We also need to maintain security within our nation. Perhaps the most prominent theme throughout this section that we're talking about right now is the intent of removing some control of the military from the president and placing it in the hands of Congress. Examples of this are seen in Clause 14's allowance for Congress to make rules for the government and regulation of the Army, and Clause 15's reliance of the legislator to summon the militia to execute the laws of the Union. So why did our founders give such enormous cessions of executive power to the legislator? The answer appears to be rooted primarily in the fear of tyranny. Going back and looking at the history of our country, this was as the British came over and as everybody else came and started laying out these laws, and the British would be fighting against us, starting our own country. They wanted to be in control, was right on the heels of many different things that had been happening in history as far as tyranny was concerned, or that of monarchies taking over countries in history. And so they had to think about this history and apply it to our own country. So, for instance, most likely origin for such a monarchy was the president. The suspicion supported by history, for instance, different forms of government like the democracy of Athens, the Republic of Rome. You had Caesar in ancient Rome, Napoleon in France, that actually came in and used their military to obtain control over their country. And so as our country was being developed and they were trying to make sure that the Constitution and the laws of the country, the overall Constitution laws and the overall individual specific laws, made sure that a president didn't have ultimate power to just come in and use the military as he wanted to. An example of today that's very similar to this is George W. Bush. When 9/11 happened, George W. Bush went into all kinds of different things that he wanted to do, and bypassing Congress to declare war and the whole thing on things. They went in to find the whether or not they were keeping bombs hidden and all that kind of stuff, and yet just wanted to bypass Congress. And it just is not the way it's set up. And there's a reason for that. And that is the history of people in other countries that have done that. They just use the military to do whatever they want and bypass the restrictions or the checks and balances that keep our president from doing that. And that's what this is all about. That is why we need the Constitution. That's why we need clause 14, 15, and 16 in there, is to keep keep not only the president in check, but to keep the governors in check, to keep the Congress in check. I mean, all three of them have these powers that are given to them, but they're always limited. So if America's army were to overthrow the popular government, it would most likely be at the command of the president. So we have to have these checks and balances. The fear of being taken over by a powerful military president led to fear by the founders. Congress was therefore unfit to control the military by itself. The military could also not be entirely entrusted to the states in the form of completely independent militias, as the nation's experience under the Articles of Confederation proved that this system was too unorganized to react quickly to an emergency. By the way, I did put a link in the chat there. Some of my research came from there. I thought was just really good on the history. So anyway, under the Articles of Confederation, which would react quickly to an emergency, a president was literally the only solution. Regardless of the necessity of independent executive control over the military, the founders of this country were not comfortable simply allowing the president to wield unchecked control over the nation's armed forces. The limitations described in these clauses were among the Congress's power over the budget, precisely provided these checks by creating situations in which the president's normally supreme role in the military is eclipsed by the legislature. It is interesting here to note that the limitations, particularly Clause 14's call for the legislature to create rules for the military, were carefully selected so as to only grant Congress powers that fit within the typical duties of creating law. In this manner, the founders reduced the threat of military dictatorship led by an overambitious president without gravely distorting the purpose of the American legislator. And I keep going back to George W. Bush. It's just the history of what he did, and his process of trying to do this was just out of bounds. There's a movie by Oliver Stone called W, and we know Oliver Stone gets a little bit, he has an agenda and everything, but it is one of the most interesting movies. I've watched it several times, and it really does help you to understand what was going through George W.'s mind during the time right after 9/11. And I highly recommend this movie if you want to get a general sense. And it really does show what we're talking about right now, when a president can have an agenda and bypass all of his checks and balances to do what he wants to do. It's hard to tell the president no. I mean, come on, he's the president of the United States. It's hard to say, no, president, we can't do that. Anyway, though the weakening of the authority of the president over the militia has its disadvantages, the founders of the United States decided to do so in many ways consistent with the purpose of Congress. created perhaps the best possible compromise between presidential power and civil security. Of course, we know that control over the militia is divided between Congress and the state governments if the militia is called into national service. Congress pays for any militia and governs its actions, no matter whether it's national or state. Congress still pays for that because in the Constitution, what we just read, Clause 16, what we're talking about right now, Congress has that control. So no matter what the state decides to do, the Congress still has to pay for that. The states, however, retain control over who serves as its officers and how its men are trained. So each individual state has control over the training and the supplying, everything like that, though Congress pays for it. These distinctions were probably more important in the 1790s than they are today. To give a little history on that, the states as well as Congress may also prescribe penalties for failure to obey the president's call for the militia. So if, for instance, a governor does rise up and do something that he's not supposed to do, Congress is the one that comes in and says, nope, that was wrong. This is going to be, you're going to be penalized for this. The states and Congress also have a concurrent power to aid the national government by calls under their own authority, and in emergencies may use the militia to put down armed insurrection. The federal government may call out the militia in case of civil war. Its authority to suppress the rebellion is found in the power to suppress insurrection and carry on war. The Act of February 28, 1795, which delegated to the president the power to call out the militia, was held constitutional. A militiaman who refused to obey such a call was not employed in the service of the United States so as to be subject to the article of war, but was liable to be tried for disobedience in the Act of 1795. Going on to the regulation of militia, the power of Congress over militia being unlimited, except in the two particulars of officering and training them. So in other words, Congress has total unlimited power over the militia as far in every different area, except by training the men and officers. So the power of the state government to legislate on the same subjects, having existed prior to the formation of the Constitution and not having been prohibited by that instrument, remains with the United States, subordinate nevertheless to the paramount law of the general government, meaning Congress. Under the National Defense Act of 1916, the militia, which had been an almost purely state institution, was brought under the control of the national government, basically Congress. And that's what they're talking about here is that, you know, even though the Constitution had allowed for Congress to have the power, it's still each state basically was in more control than they are today. The term militia of the United States was defined to comprehend all able-bodied male citizens of the United States and all other able-bodied males who have declared their intention to become citizens of the United States between the ages of 18 and 45. The act reorganized the National Guard, determined by its size in proportion to the population in several states, required that all enlistments be for 3 years in service and 3 years in reserve. So when you go into the National Guard, which is a militia, you go in for 3 years of active service and 3 years of reserve. It still does not, it's not understood to be active service in the armed military. Even though you're in active service to the National Guard, the militia is different than your active service in the military, like the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, so on and so forth. It's limited to the appointment of officers to those who shall have successfully passed such tests as physical, moral, and professional fitness as the president shall prescribe, and authorize the president in certain emergencies to draft into the military service of the United States to serve therein for the period of the war unless sooner discharged. Any or all members of the National Guard or National Guard Reserve who thereupon should stand discharged from the militia. So to understand also, the National Guard and the National Guard Reserve is still the National Guard, but it's still the militia. It's just you have to understand the difference between active service and reserve service. The militia clauses do not constrain Congress in raising and supporting a national army. The court has approved the system of dual enlistment, under which persons enlisted in state militia, National Guard units simultaneously enlist in the National Guard of the United States. So you can actually be in both National Guards at the same time. So when they're called into active duty of federal service or relieved of their status in state militia. So if something is going on and the United States needs even more people to come over to their individual National Guard, for instance, let's just say like when we went to war with Iran and the different things that we had, the National Guard went in there more than our armed services did. I've got several friends that are in the National Guard or retired from National Guard today, and I remember when we were at war with the different countries since 9/11. That they were over there overseas. And I always thought, I don't understand, I thought National Guard was taking care of the United States. Well, they are when it comes down to individual states. But when we get into a conflict in the United States that's national and it's overseas, they can literally take these people from a state National Guard and re-enlist them into the United States National Guard, the federalized National Guard, and you are now a part of that. You don't have any say over it, nothing. You are just now a part of the federalized National Guard. Consequently, the restrictions of the first militia clause have no application to the federalized National Guard. There is no constitutional requirement that state governors hold a veto power over federal duty training conducted outside the United States, or that a national emergency be declared before such training may take place. So that's basically saying that the state governors have absolutely no jurisdiction. They have no rights whatsoever. If the United States comes in and says, okay, this troop, we want this many men from your state and this many men from your state and this many men from your state, the United States Congress can come into the states and say, we want this many men from your state, and there's nothing you can do about it. All those men will have to go and serve and actually be re-enlisted into the United States National Guard to serve under them, and there's not a thing in the world they can do about it. And so even your unorganized militia can be served up that way by the United States Congress, because they have the power to regulate all that happens within the militia. And the militia, it serves as an extremely wide range of people. So from anywhere from the organized National Guard, Air National Guard, or Army National Guard, the states right down to the civilians that have never been in the service. The Congress has the power to incorporate all that and be under total control. So interesting little research. That's about all I have on this. So if either one of you have anything you want to add to that, or you're not allowed to subtract from what I did, but you can either add or multiply, but no subtraction or division. Not in here. What I say, that's my research. So anything either one of you got to add? Thoughts on these things that I've been talking about? I think they're just incredible epiphanies to me. A lot of the stuff I just absolutely did not even have a concept of. I figured the states had their National Guard, we had ours, and so on and so forth. But I guess if you need the men, the government's going to go get them. So there you go.
Well, I think
nothing, huh? Go ahead, Sherry.
I think it's good that you pointed out that there are different pools of militia that the government can pull from. And, they're kind of put into two main categories: organized and not organized. An unorganized militia and an organized militia. And there are personal or private organizations that call themselves a militia or an unorganized militia.
Right.
The problem with that word today, that's all right.
It's all right. All right.
And, Texas has their state constitution actually provides for an unorganized reserve militia, is what they call it. And they can be called up to uphold the peace. And they don't have to be the National Guard, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's true.
Private citizens can go out if they're called up and they can uphold the peace. And, of course, they do other things. What is it? If anybody's trying to invade and all that. That was one of the things that was reported in history. I don't know. There's question as to whether it was true or not. But, when they bombed Pearl Harbor, they asked the commander of the fleet, why didn't you go ahead and go in and invade America? And he had been educated in America. And it's reported that he said, because behind every blade of grass, will be an American with a gun.
Yep.
And that would include not only our organized military servicemen, but also the militia. And in response to Abigail's earlier comment, are you wanting to be what was called in the Revolutionary War a Mary Pritchard? She carried water to the troops, and then when her husband fell, she took up on a cannon or something and is reported to have got in there and fought with the men. Just so
I can see Abigail doing that. I can see it. I can. What? Say again. I'm sorry.
She's wanting to be a Molly Pritchard.
I agree. I think she is a Molly Pritchard. You didn't need to be wanting to be. She is one. I agree.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because, again, look at I like to see how this is affecting us today, the now, because look at how that whole surge of wanting to do away with the Second Amendment, regarding the guns. And how dangerous is that? Because the problem is this, guns put into the people's, the hands for their own defense is a good thing. There's nothing wrong if you are a upstanding citizen and you want to defend your family, or if there's a need within your community, you can be ready if you're called in, and also if you're ready for an emergency. But now there's this surge that wants to get rid of the guns, and they're using something that is criminal to try to bring leverage to it. And the criminality is all the guns that are coming in. We have these people who are going to people's communities. There's U-Hauls there, and it's been said that there are guns on the U-Hauls. Someone is supplying guns to these people who are having this unlawful protest. And it's not a protest, it's actually chaos, it's actually terrorism. And so because of that kind of action, there are people using that as leverage to get rid of the Second Amendment.
Interesting.
And so, I mean, I look at this as a part of defense, because the truth of the matter is, and I'm looking at human nature. If we look at human beings and how human beings over the period of time, there's been change in the way people think. There's been change in the way people deal with certain situations. There's certain priorities that some people don't have anymore. And there's people that don't even see any American, I'm quote unquote, American dream. You know, the person that has a home, wants to raise a family, a white picket fence, go to school, go to church, go to, synagogue, or, however you want to worship. And just everybody, let's all everybody, work out our differences, but let's get along type thing. The Leave It to Beaver generation. But now it's like, what's happened to the mindset of the human race? You talk to people who are in quote unquote university, they can't even tell you about the American dream.
Right.
They don't know. They are just, it's like America needs some serious work done on it. What kind of work would you suggest? Well, look at the state it's in. I mean, it's a mess. Really? How long have you been in America? Well, I'm 18 years old. I've been here since I was 18. Oh, wow. You really have some insight. So I'm saying all that to say this, that my main concern is this. I love the militia. I think the militia is a good idea. And I like the way it's governed as far as governed. I'm thankful that there's a restriction. I'm thankful there's laws concerning it. But I'm also saying this. Where we are today, as far as the human race, do you all believe that we need the Second Amendment?
Of course.
But there's people out there that don't want you to have, something to defend your family.
Of course.
And so I'm saying that we really are and I'm talking in the United States of America. I'm talking about that.
Of course.
I'm not talking about China. Sure. I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about right here in the United States. So I'm glad you're bringing this up again, Mark, about the militia, because I think that mindset needs to be brought to the attention of this next generation to say, there's a reason why these things manifested. It's called defending against harm, defending against people that want to take your lives for no reason other than that they have this warped manifestation of thinking. They don't have and I'll go back to the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They don't like the way America is going. They think that America needs, look what America is doing. And so anyhow, but the bottom line is, all I can say is hallelujah for this aspect of the Constitution. I mean it, because to me, it's like it needs to surface again to bring understanding why the Second Amendment is so important, because I think it bleeds into the militia.
Very true. Very good. Yeah.
It bleeds into it, doesn't it? I mean, because if someone's called to defend a situation, if riots start to break out, then there's going to be a militia called in to say, even maybe it's called the Holy Spirit's going to say, you're called, Mark. You need to get out there because right now there's something going on in the streets and nobody else is defending them. Right. And so anyhow, I'm thankful you're bringing it to everybody's attention. Because
Well, it's you start talking about defending the United States, and I even yet still today, even older people forget the young people just go right to that's why we have the Army. It's there it is. That's why we have the Army. When in fact the Army and the Navy, the Marines and the Air Force really don't defend the United States except for outside of the borders for the most part. They can and they do and they will defend inside the borders. But when you come talking about, if we got attacked, yes, all for everybody would come together and do this. But it just in general conflict, when there's something going on in another country, those forces really have more to do with outside the country. Our reserve forces, our militia, and it's so funny, once again, I don't think most people have an understanding that word militia literally has to do with inside our borders defense forces is what it is. They are armed and unarmed defense forces, and people don't see that. They don't think about it. It's just like, even when I think of the Army, I start when you say the word Army, the word that comes to mind is in Iran or Iraq, or it's somewhere else. It's where they're at, doing their job there. I don't think of it here in the United States. I know there are Army bases and along with everything else, and they're here, but those are for training purpose to go out to defend our country, to do that. So inside now, real quickly, I just did a search on Google. I went to the great and mighty Google, and I did a search for militia. And I don't know how well you can see it here, but I clicked the video tab, and I didn't put in United States militia. I didn't put in any other criteria, just militia, as you can see right here. And you go down the list, and it says study warns 5 states at high risk for election-related armed so-and-so. Do armed right-wing militia groups pose a threat to the U.S.? Armed militia groups increase their visibility. Pennsylvania at risk, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And you can see all kinds of videos here, I'm sure, about the militia, and they are all, to some extent, you got one here, Pennsylvania at risk for armed activity around election. You see all different kinds of things that the militia are very, very active in the United States, and it has nothing to do with our organized. When you put militia in it, it doesn't talk about the organized militia. It talks about unorganized militia that are out there being incorporated by our United States government, our state government, by state, by so on and so forth. And I mean, even in most of these, I'm looking down and seeing North Carolina, Texas, Virginia, California, New Mexico. They're individually divided out, where each different militia is defending its state. And so it's interesting. It's very active today, if not more active today than it ever has been, because we need them more than we've ever needed them before. But how interesting on how it comes down to, once again, Clause 16. You got to remember Clause 16, the Congress. Number 1, the Congress shall have power to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. There's an and there. and for governing such part. So that first part, organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and then comma, and for governing such part as them as may be employed in the service of the United States. So you're literally talking right there in that first part of the sentence. The first part has to do with unorganized militia. Then it talks about the organized militia. And then it goes on, reserving to the states, respectively, the appointment of officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Congress has that power. Now, and then it's divided up. If the president needs to bring all that in action, the president has the power to do that, but it has to be run through Congress. The president can't just stand up and say, okay, well, I'm going to go to war with Iraq and I'm gathering together all the military and okay, you guys get ready, let's go. He can't do that. He's got to run it through Congress. And it's the same thing with the governors. If the governors need something on a moment's notice, yes, for their state, yes, they can call in to their militia to do that, organized or unorganized, but they still have to run it through Congress because Congress has the power to organize those things. So it's very interesting how all that works and can really cause time displacement, all kinds of different things that can cause problems. But yet it sure keeps a check and balance on our president, the governors, the states, the whole thing. And I'm glad we have Congress. I'm glad we have the Constitution. I really am. I mean, as corrupt as it is, Abigail and Sherry, way back in the beginning when we first started studying this out, and we come to find out that the House of Congress and the House of Representatives and Congress, the people that are in there, their one job is to vote, and they don't even have to show up for work, and they get paid $140,000 a year, and they don't even have to show up for work. Just really plummeted me down in the basement digging holes. It's like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Yet we need that Congress to keep the checks and balances and things. And of course, we have to have the Constitution to regulate the Congress, who regulates everybody else, who blah, 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 blah.
One thing I think we need to do, though, with the Congress and all these elected officials, have a term. These people that make it a career,
I know.
They get it has to be limited because it becomes a career, and they become so absorbed in it, Mark, that they make decisions that are not based on we the people.
I know.
That's where I think we have to make some changes because we have, yourself. I mean, over the period of time, you can work very hard to do X, Y, Z. And then when X, Y, Z is like, well, this is a piece of cake. I'm in this. Wow, look at this. Yeah. And so then you're not even thinking about we the people. You're just thinking, I want to keep that money coming in. I just want to keep that these 5 houses going that are not just houses, and I want to have my guards out there.
That's right.
I don't want you to have one gun in your house to defend you. No, I want to have all my guards, and I want to be able to, So I'm just saying that I think there's a lot of imbalance going on.
No.
But I think what you're right about one thing, Mark, and
one thing.
Many
one thing I'm right about. That's just
many things. I know many things.
Tell me one thing
you are most right about.
Thank you.
Is the Constitution, and the fact that you brought this to the table.
Right.
The one thing that has to be changed is people need to get a paradigm shift. Yeah. There needs to be a paradigm shift in the people like Shifty Shift and others, because people have gone, can I say the word, insane?
Oh, yeah, you can say that.
They've gone insane.
You can say that.
There needs to be teshuva. There needs to be a balance of the Constitution plus the Constitution, which is the word of God, into people's
Right.
hearts. Because right now we have a lot of insanity manifesting who don't know how to make a decision based on morals, do not know how to make a decision based on constitutional rights. And we, the people, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They're not preserving life. I hate to say it. It grieves me to see what's happening in the United States of America, but let's face reality. I'm not, let's not sugarcoat this. We need to have a repentance going on here. That's my last say on this.
I agree. All right.
I love
Very
the
good.
Constitution, though, Mark.
Thank you. You're more than welcome. And as always, very well said, Abigail. I appreciate it. Sherry, any last words?
Well, we're talking about the militia. And when you actually look at the wording on the Second Amendment, it starts out a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And the right for the people to keep means that we can possess weapons, guns, or whatever for our own defense.
Hallelujah.
And that is a right. I mean, I think it was AOC said, well, I think it was her said, well, if the founding fathers meant for us to have guns, it would have been a right. And we're like, duh. I mean, you got a congressperson up there, like you said, they should be made to read the Constitution, just like the kings of Israel were told they had to write the Torah so they would know what God had said.
Amen.
And one other thing, it says one of the big brouhaha about Amy Coney Barrett is that for so long, and we can look back and see this, that the legislature, Congress, has used the courts, to make law, to legislate, which they are supposed to legislate. And I think I don't remember the exact question, but it kind of came up with the things going on with Mrs. Barrett, Justice Barrett being put on the court. And she was saying, she would tell them, somebody'd ask her, she'd say, well, we are, regardless of our personal thoughts or anything else, we are to go with what the law says. And basically, I don't know if she said this, but I've heard other people tell Congress is, if you don't like what the law says, then you need to change it. That's your job.
Right.
So they have, if you look back at a lot of the rulings that have come down, the judges have gone beyond what the law says and put their own spin on it. And they are actually been using the court systems to legislate and do what they wanted when they couldn't get it passed. They couldn't get a law passed to say what they wanted. They've used the court system to do that, and this court packing is a big deal. But anyway, that gets off into something else. But, I think that there's only 3 countries. I looked it up while we were talking. There's only 3 countries. I used to think the United States were the only ones who had the right to bear arms in the Constitution, but there's only 3: Mexico, Guatemala, and the United States.
Is that right?
There's only 3 that have it in their Constitution. Now you got guns, in other countries and all this, but it says it's only written in these 3 countries' constitutions: Mexico, Guatemala, and the United States.
How
interesting. The way they talk, like we're the only country out there that have it in our Constitution.
Huh.
Yeah. So it is a deterrent, and it's like they were, like you said earlier, you have to call up, you have to call up the soldiers, the National Guard and everything. How long does that take when somebody's tearing up everything?
Right.
And it can come down even closer to home. How long does it take if somebody's breaking in your house? How long does it take for the police to get there?
Yeah.
You better have something,
Right.
It's just, I'm an old Girl Scout. You better be prepared. You better have something. If nothing else, a big old heavy hot skillet. I mean, that'll get it too. But then
there you go.
Now they'll start outlawing hot skillets.
Very true. Well said. Good deal. Thanks, Sherry. All right. Thank you guys so much. Once again, we've a great show, and we will go on next week with Clause 17, which says the Congress shall have the power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may, by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and needful buildings. Okay, well, sounds pretty boring to me, but we'll see where this leads, because I haven't done the research on that. But I got a little bit. I've got a few notes on that I've already done, but I haven't done any major research. So that ought to be interesting. Me
and Abigail will rev it up for you.
We'll make it interesting.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes.
All right, I'll let you guys do that. But for today, we got to go. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
guys
Mark.
are the best. I appreciate
you, Mark.
You bet.
You, Mark.
Sure.
I think this is a good civics lessons for all the little homeschoolers.
I agree.
It's just, civics 101, just read the Constitution.
I have a good civics question for those who are in university, because they're not getting it there.
That's right. Hey, I think it's a good civic lesson for the president of the United States. So,
yeah,
and everybody running for president. So let's put it that way. All right. Thank you guys. God bless. And we'll see you next week. Sure appreciate you so much.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.